Hi there, this is Jimmy Roberts. You know, when it comes to the game of golf, there is no place on earth like the metropolitan area. It's always been a special place for the game of golf and also for golf writing. Some of the most esteemed and accomplished journalists covering the game work here. Now, you'll get a chance to hear them right here on the Metropolitan Golf Writers Association podcast.
Dr. Tom Ferraro, welcome to the MGWA podcast. And I know that many of our listeners, particularly the sports writers, know who you are. You are a member of the MGWA, and you've written a couple books. But let me read a brief bio just for those who aren't familiar with you or the MGWA. Dr. Tom Ferraro is a highly respected sports performance psychologist with a PhD in psychology from SUNY Stony Brook and board certification as a psychoanalyst. He brings a unique perspective to the world of sports psychology. His extensive experience working with professional teams, coaches, and Olympic athletes across various sports positions him as a trusted authority in mental preparation for athletes.
Excellent.
Welcome. Oh.
Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's our pleasure. Our pleasure. Hank Oler recommended you highly, and I'm glad we finally connected.
Good.
So I was hoping we could start with your backstory, where you grew up, your connection to golf, how you got into your profession, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, okay. I grew up in Massapequa Park on Long Island. My first round of golf was at Peninsula Golf Club, a 9-hole public course, kind of a quirky, weird little course. Let me see. I was a good baseball player as a kid. Got to be age 13. I had to go to the Babe Ruth League. I could see that these boys were wild, and I said, I'm out of here. So I went to golf. Really focused on golf. And that's, it took me up through high school, played college golf at Iona College, and here I am,
Talk to me about your family. Were you a big, large family, siblings?
Yeah, it's a big Italian family, 5 kids. I was the second oldest. My older brother was very, very smart, so I benefited from listening to him and listening to my father. It was also kind of very garrulous and enjoyable to listen to a lot of stories. So I was kind of developed into a natural listener, a psychologist, a psychoanalyst. By virtue of that, I think that's a big thing that happened to me, the listening to them and finding them interesting. And so I'm naturally, I've been told a lot of times, I'm a natural psychologist kind of thing. Basically because I like to listen to people. And I always feel that people have interesting things to say.
Okay. Now, were you on the Iona golf team?
Yes, I was number 1 man on the team. That was way back in the day where things were easier. This is the late 60s so sometimes I'd go back to college and give them talks, and it's clear to me I wouldn't even make the team nowadays. I wouldn't be on the team. Then I was number 1 guy. So the competition now is unbelievable. The excellence in all sports is really quite amazing. But yeah, so I played college golf. I won some golf tournaments in college, and it was 4 years of college was certainly the best years of my life. I really enjoyed it very much.
Where did you attain your golfing prowess? Was your dad a golfer?
He was a golfer. He introduced me to the game. We have a lot of athletes and athletic connections. So we're horse breeders and horse trainers. So we knew a lot of jockeys. I wound up starting to play golf at Indian Hills and Hempstead Country Club, where there's a number of jockeys there. And so I got good at golf because I was kind of a spoiled kid, raised at country clubs and spent every day playing golf in the summertime, have 2 good, very close friends through that. And, I just thrived, and I liked that. I was a lucky kid, actually, and my father never made me feel guilty about spending money, this or that or the other. So I was very lucky in many, many ways, I think,
Yeah. What did he do for a living?
He was a manufacturer of plumbing supplies. So he had a big plumbing company, and story I always tell about that is I'm first year into graduate school. Now, it's very hard to get into Stony Brook. I'm studying psychology at this point. And he calls me up and he wanted me to come into the business with him. I said, Dad, this is, I'm really here studying a psychology degree. So there's no way. And that was really a turning point, because I think that was in the back of my mind. Maybe I'll do my family business, or maybe I will do regular psychology. And that was a turning point. When I made that decision, then I really focused much more intensely on my studies in terms of, getting a PhD in psychology.
Yeah. When you graduated with that PhD, what did you go into private practice immediately, or did you work for a firm first?
Well, yeah, I was at Stony Brook. They're really the founders of behavior modification, Herb Kay, Leonard Krasner, these guys. So I learned a lot about behavior mod. My first job was working at an international clinic for obsessive compulsive disorder. So I treated, really high-end, cutting-edge stuff, behavior mod stuff, an hour and a half a day, 6 days a week for about 6 weeks. They would fly in from all over the world, these really very ill obsessive compulsives, and I would treat them and with all sorts of interesting things, response cost and thought stopping, a lot of stuff, exposure therapy, and I enjoyed it, but within a year or so, I realized that this is not enough. Behavior mod is not really enough. The patients wanted to continue with me, some of them, and I could see that there was symptom substitution. So I went back to school for 4 more years to get a psychoanalytic degree at Nassau County Medical Center, and then I became a practicing psychoanalyst.
Okay. But you didn't go into sports psychology right away, did you? Were you doing general?
General psychology for a while, but I always knew that, I liked golf, I liked sports, I was a good golfer. Even when I was younger, I thought I'd become a professional golfer, and I realized by the time I was 17, that my club set up a match between me and another guy, another hot shot from Plandome Country Club. And by the third hole, I realized I was not going to become a professional golfer. I was going to become a psychologist. I made that decision during that round, actually. He turned out to be George Burns III, a really, really great professional golfer that won all sorts of things. So that I can thank George for that, the turning point in my life, actually.
Really? Is that George Burns, the same cigar-smoking George Burns?
No, that's a comic. No, George Burns Plandome is a professional golfer. He won probably 9 or 10 PGA events, almost won the Open at Merion. David Graham beat him. But so he was a very, very good player. And he was a football guy, but also a really good golfer. And so, when I was up against him when I was young, I said, I'm never going to make it onto the tour.
So how do you go about establishing a practice? That's a pretty lofty goal, right?
How do I go about what?
Establishing a practice as a sports psychologist.
Well, yeah, of course. You hear this, you ask this question many times by my interns. How do you become a sports psychologist? How do you establish a private practice? How do you become successful? And I say it's very, very simple to become a successful sports psychologist. And I say, so my office, I have a suite of offices looking at a parking lot. I tell the intern, take a look at this parking lot. And they look at the parking lot, right? I say, every morning I'm the first one here. Every evening I'm the last one to leave. That's the formula for success. It's very, very simple. Just keep working. Work hard, work very hard, and you'll become successful. And as far as establishing myself as a sports psychologist, I love sports. I like to develop my craft. I like to constantly improve on things, the things I do. That's why I write books. Because you're forced to think and to learn much more as you're writing. And that's very, very helpful for a psychologist. We know very little about the human mind still, right? So there's a long way to go. And what I could see now in terms of sports psychology itself is a very, very weak profession. And it's predominantly cognitive behavioral in nature, which is it's kind of a flimsy kind of intervention. So we need more. And so what I believe is depth sports psychology, which is a long-term psychoanalytic approach to the athlete. They deserve it.
I do want to talk to you about the difference there, but before we leave the topic, in between arriving first and leaving last, what did you do? I mean, did you call coaches? Did you call players? How did you establish your brand as a sports psychologist?
Well, the person I worked with she was entering the tour, and I knew her locally. And so I said to her, I'd be willing to work with you for free until you make the first $50,000, then you can pay me back what you owe me. So that was my beginning. And I worked with her, and she immediately became pretty successful on tour. So I got the money back, and that was the beginning. And, what I also tell my interns that whatever the sport is that you love, that's something you should connect to that, right? So you push into that arena. Who doesn't love sports, right? Sports are fun. It's tremendously fun. And so when you work with athletes, these are high-level, high-functioning, bright guys or women that are driven. And it's basically a joy being in this field. It's every day, This morning, I worked with someone from a tennis player he's in Germany. So you have to figure out time zones a lot of times. But, this fascinating guy, bright guy, well-educated guy. Tennis players usually are very bright, these multi-language kind of guys. Golfers I work with, professionals, tennis players, rugby players, soccer players. It's a blast, and so that's another part of working as a successful sports psychologist. You fall in love with what you do and with the patients. Basically, it's fun stuff.
Yeah.
How can it not be?
So you started out counseling golfers, correct?
Yep.
How did you avoid not getting pigeonholed as a golfing sports psychologist? How did you break into other types of athletics?
I think it's kind of natural that happened, right? Your name gets around a little bit, then other people start to call you, the tennis players, the baseball players, basketball, like I know a lot of people, right? So eventually the word gets around and all of a sudden you're working with any number of types of teams as well as individuals. And so that's relatively straightforward. It happens. And I tell my interns, if you really want to be very rich and very famous, this is what you do. You don't only become a psychologist, you become a sports psychologist. No, not a golf psychologist. No, not golf psychologist, short game psychologist. No, not short game psychologist, 5-foot putt sports psychologist. That's all you do. If you do that within 2 years, you're world famous and you're rich. I guarantee it.
But you didn't do that, right?
No, I couldn't do that. To me, it would be a little too maybe boring. But That's the answer. Any kind of tight niche is really what you want,
Yeah. So do most of your clients come just for a quick fix or a short period of time, or do they last for years?
My client base now is people I've worked with for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So the bulk of my practice now is filled with patients that are long-term, once or twice a week type of patients. Initially, when patients come, I think most patients have the belief that it's going to be easy and quick. That's the fantasy that standard sports psychology kind of pushes forward. Mm-hmm. That it's like, I won't mention names, but the most famous sports psychologists are, there's nothing weird about psychology. It's very easy to do this kind of stuff. It's contrary to that. So that people have a fantasy, a couple of sessions of positive self-talk and visualization and goal setting will really do the trick. And this couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, I can get anyone to do anything for 24 hours, or I can hypnotize people to do whatever, and you really can get them to be really focused. But it's like the behavior mod is like Valium. It lasts 24 hours, and then it really does. And then, of course, the question is, well, you can do the same thing week after week, right? And if you keep hypnotizing someone or positive self-talk week after week, that'll be the answer, right? That's literally not possible to do. Why? It's so boring. I once asked Albert Ellis, one of my teachers, right? He was the founder of RET, very, very famous guy. Dr. Ellis, the one concern I have about the work that we're doing in terms of rational emotive therapy is, doesn't it get boring doing the same comment to the same patient week after week? And his comment was, that's a ridiculous question. I don't want to hear questions like that, which meant, of course, that was a good question.
Sounds like Donald Trump. I find it interesting that you call them patients. Do they object to that, thinking, because you would think patients, they must be sick, or must have some illness?
Well, they do. They have neurosis or worse. They have borderline. They have drug addiction. They're patients. I have no trouble calling them, and I don't think they care one way or the other. Patients that connect with me, they realize they tend to be brighter patients, more introspective, and also successful. And so they know that they need some help, and I don't think that matters to them. And I know that's a typical thing, sports psychologists, they're clients, they're not patients. This, of course, implies that they're actually healthy, and they're not healthy. Athletes are unbelievably troubled because of this unbelievable stress that they're in. So it's it's quibbling and it's equivocating, this kind of stuff. It's a client, it's not a patient. Really? Okay, great.
How often is the root cause their parents? They either drove them or put so much pressure on them that it's in their head.
There's two element neurosis. One is family dynamics, mother, father, and sibling. Birth order is usually important also, right? So that's one element. Then if that's okay enough and the genetic loading on the young athlete is strong, they get into a domain of growth, right? And so the second order of business, by the time they're 12 or 13, if they become nationally known, they're really under pressure, tremendous amount of pressure, a lot of money put into them, and they're aware of that. And so that's another element of great difficulty. During the teen years, athletes have a tremendous, when they're really talented, have a real problem, real difficulty. And the only way they get through that is if they really have lucky enough to have a great support system. Like a Tiger Woods had a great support system. Both his parents were, and he had Jay Brunza, who worked with him for 10,000 hours.
Wow.
No one knows that story. Jay Brunza was a pretty good psychologist. He caddied for him during all his teen years.
Wow.
So you get thousands of hours of real decent professional help. So, but that's a unique case. Tiger was very, very lucky.
Yeah. Do you actually get to that, or do you talk to the patients that have that condition where you actually address the fact their parents had a lot to do with whatever's not working right for them?
Oh, definitely. Of course.
Okay.
Of course. You have no choice. Let's say if a father is abusive, it's inevitable that if the patient is having difficulty acting out in some way as an adult, even a star adult, right? That there's going to be a connection between either the mother or the father or the siblings, right? And then, of course, you talk about that. You go back to, do you think this acting out now has anything to do with the fact that your father beat the crap out of you in parking lots if you didn't shoot 66 when you were 14 years old? And of course, it's obvious that it does have an impact. And so, yeah, inevitably you talk about those things.
Yeah. There was a series on, I think was it Apple TV recently, called Stick? Did you watch that?
No.
It was about a young golfer whose father was the reason for his dysfunction.
What's the name?
Let me read.
Stick. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Let me read something you wrote that I thought was interesting. I'd like to have you talk about it a little bit. You said the current state of sports psychology is failing the athlete by emphasizing a superficial, quick fix surface-only approach with cognitive behavioral techniques. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, 99% of sports psychology is cognitive behavioral. Cognitive behavior therapy started in 1950. It's been going strong ever since. And for sports, it's very appealing, the quick fix, because, professional athletes really have no time whatsoever, right? They have zero time. So any professional I work with, it's a very, very difficult thing. So they have no time. The coach doesn't like psychology. The GM doesn't like psychology. They think that we're wacky people, the whole bit, right? So you could see that a simple approach is very appealing to them. And even the theory and research on behavior modification is very, very impressive. The only problem with behavior mod when it comes to regular people or athletes is it doesn't work. That's the only problem. Other than that, it looks like it's very effective. The research is there. But and I think probably in terms of sports psychology, it's the amount of emotional pressure that athletes are under is so extreme that regular behavior mod stuff it's like building a sandcastle on a beach and hoping that the tsunami is going to crush it. The tsunami of pressure, emotional pressure in any competitive sport is tremendous. And so the behavior mod simply doesn't hold up.
Make it harder for you to sell your services if you say to an athlete, hey, you know what, we're not going to fix this in 2 sessions. The issues are deeper than that, and we need to really spend time to get to those?
Yeah, it makes it a little bit hard, but not really. I mean, the reason they love behavior mod is because they're resistant to change, right? So all the defenses we have in our mind in order to stabilize things, not to change in any way. So the athlete is attracted to that kind of a resistant, get me out of here fast. So, and one of the naive parts of standard sports psychology is they don't even write about, this is the most obvious thing in the world. When you're working with a patient, it's obvious to me within 5 minutes a lot of times, but within 2 or 3 or 4 sessions, there's the resistance. And so much of the research in psychoanalysis is about resistance, why patients resist the help. Why do they resist change? Why don't they want to change, right? Despite the fact that they're suffering. So in terms of regular sports psychology, it's very naive that they deny this. So they comply with the sports person and, okay, this is quick and easy. So what happens typically is that they go through a couple of seminars about deep breathing, positive self-talk, the whole bit, right? And then they leave. It may be helpful to them for a couple of days, maybe a week even, and then they're back to square one. And so what that does systematically over time is that destroys the reputation of sports psychology. So if sports psychology doesn't change, it's in big trouble. And so all of my work, all of my books are about paradigm change in sports psychology so that you actually have something that's useful. And unfortunately for everyone, it takes time for something to work.
Yeah.
Like an athlete who becomes a great golfer, he doesn't do this in 3 sessions. He has to put 10 years of hard work, 6 hours a day. A professional athlete works about 6 hours a day as a kid, 6 days a week on their craft. And after over 10 years, they become an athlete. They become a high-level professional athlete. It's the same thing for the mind, even more so, actually. So it takes time.
Are the type of issues that you help athletes with, is it tougher for people in individual sports like golf and tennis and gymnastics than it is with team?
Well, the dynamics are very different, right? Team dynamics, like we have the Ryder Cup coming up. So team dynamics are very, very different than individual dynamics. Individual dynamics are you have anxiety, you have anger, you have poor focus, you have burnout scenarios, right? This is the kind of stuff that you have to work on. And what are the causes of the anxiety and the anger, right? And a team, you have those things, but also you have what's called regression. So when any athlete enters a team, they regress into a childhood experience. Why? Because it connotes the family. So everything pulls towards, I'm a child again. So they regress. That's why, NBA players and NFL players, baseball also, the GMs and coaches are pulling their hair out. Why do these guys act like children? Because they regress. So the team dynamic is quite different than an individual dynamic.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you kind of destroyed my. I was hoping to get a whole bunch of cognitive tips out of you, but here's
I can give you plenty if you want. No problem.
Well, Hank Gola said that you shaved a couple points off his handicap. Now I don't know if they came back, but some questions I have.
I guarantee that it came back. My favorite story about temporary work is with Mark Cannizzaro. So years ago, he did a piece on me for the Post, right? So he came to my club. I wouldn't mention the name of the club. And we played golf. 9 holes, he shot 39. He looks at me on the 10th tee. This is the best 9 holes of my life. 39. I broke 40. The back 9, he shot 51. Okay. So that shows you people it's very hard to make change. However, when I'm playing with a regular person, I'm kind of a positive and I'm very supportive and I listen to them and I really encourage them. And uniformly, they do better when they play against me. They thrive, they feel, this guy's, he respects me, he likes me, he's supporting me. They relax, including Hank and Mark also. They relax. Right. And so and I know golf also. So I know a couple of little baby tips, I usually give them as well. But the long term is a very different story. And yeah, there's many tips. In other words, if I'm playing in a competition, right, but I'm not interested in supporting the person, you don't want to play golf with me. I am completely the opposite, totally the opposite. And I learned all of that from Pia Nilsson, who's a great sports psychologist from Sweden. She worked with Annika Sorensson and made Annika really great, right? So what Pia teaches, and which I teach also, is you really want to be effective in golf? It's very simple, Annika. This is what you do. Keep your mouth shut all day long. Don't talk to the person. No compliments, no nothing. Totally isolated. And that's a very, very powerful thing. Because that the etiquette in golf especially, it's a social game, blah, blah, blah. So when you flip the coin there and you go completely, it's called passive aggression, right? You become completely passive. It's really very effective form of gamesmanship, and it's legal also. So
Tiger Woods was good at that, wasn't he?
Kind of. He wasn't really harsh, but he was good at everything. Yeah. I mean, I could talk about him a lot in terms of his defense mechanisms, but he was extraordinary in many, many ways. And including that, he's mind blowing to be next to him. It's mind blowing. It's just like an aura that almost knocks you over when you're with him. Yeah. Really, the charisma at the highest level, that is.
I want to ask a question that I've wondered about for many years. On the PGA Tour, you see professionals who are at the top of their game on the leaderboard for months, many months, and even years, and then they just disappear. What happens there? Did they just get rich and don't care anymore and don't practice, or is it in their head?
Well, it's interesting. It depends what the circumstance is, of course. So sometimes there's the tour is a grind, so it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pain, actually, right? So if they have enough money, the concept would be to leave, although that usually doesn't work that way because fame is so addictive. It's so incredibly addictive to be inside the rope, and part of the golf writers, they have a feeling for that because they get inside the ropes as well, right? So there's tremendous addiction to perpetuating the experience of fame, of applause, right? That's the weakness of live. There's no audience to applaud them, so they hate it, you know. So that's part of it.
Okay.
Yeah. So also you see with some athletes that win big tournament, they disappear, right? It's a lot. You see this a lot with majors. They win one major and you never see them again, right? What happens in that case? What I think what I've seen happen is that when that occurs, the major is won. Now the corporate sharks come in, and there's all sorts of interesting deals. It happened to Rory, right? So here you have to change equipment. Here's another $50 million, change the equipment. And so they're forced into making changes that they shouldn't be making.
Yeah.
And so when that happens, all bets are off. Golf is a fragile game. It's a very difficult game. So when you start, changing things because people are tempting you through money, it's very difficult to say no. Who's going to say no to live when they say, here's $50 million, come play with us? Who the hell is going to say no to this?
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I'd say yes right away, right?
Yeah.
So it's a difficult thing. I realized that when a few years ago, I got a call from Coors Light. They wanted me to be a talking head. So I immediately knew it was a bad idea, right? I immediately knew it was bad. So I said, tell me about it. So they sent over some information, very sophisticated plan about a certain thing, right? So I talked to my lawyer. No, I'm not going to do it. But at the end of the conversation, it's like a 2-week conversation, I said, oh, by the way, what are you paying? They said, well, we'll come to your office. We'll be there maybe 2 full weekends, 60, 70, 80 hours. It's going to be very simple for you. We pay $1,000 an hour. Within 3 seconds, I said, this sounds like a good idea. I'm all in. Right. So that's the power of money. Yeah. Who's going to say no to this?
Yeah.
Nobody. So Liv approaches you and says, here's $100 million. Would you? Tiger Woods didn't say it, but it's I don't blame any of the guys for saying yes for that stuff.
Yeah. Here's another question I have. So you get a guy like Nicklaus who, if his PR is to be believed, who had amazing focus and claims that he would envision a shot and then he would just let his body take over. Now, I'm no Jack Nicklaus. I'm a guy who has too many swing thoughts in my head. I'm thinking, finish your backswing, start with your hips, and I don't let my body take over. My brain is working overtime. Yeah. So talk to me about that. I mean, should I just let my body take over?
Something about professional athletes. They're not regular human beings. They're not regular people. They're genetically gifted. What does it mean to be genetically gifted? I once met Emmitt Smith, the football player, at a party out in the Hamptons. My first impression of Emmitt was it would be impossible to knock him over. That was how I felt. He was like a bowling ball with short legs. You can't knock this guy over, right? Yeah. This is a natural gift. Or if you meet, I can tell in airports who's professional athlete and who's not. One guy was Olympic weightlifter. I immediately knew he was in the Olympics because his neck was like gigantic, right? So boxers have big necks. Jockeys are teeny people that are really well dressed, right? So they're not regular people. Some of the athletes one guy I work with is probably one of the top 5 putters in the world. I have never said one thing about his putting, not once, ever. How can you mess up? Anything I would contribute would be negative as far as he has natural gift. His body, I remember this one kid, he was on the tour for a while, then he was knocked off the tour, and I talked to him. I said, what happened? He said, I could not control my heart rate. I couldn't control the heart rate. So that's a genetic thing, right? Some athletes cool under pressure. Some are not. If you're not cool under pressure in golf and your heart is racing, good luck. It's not good luck. So obviously, Nicklaus is a tremendously gifted, genetically gifted person. So yes, he will he'll see a shot and he'll hit the shot without any interruption from his cognition, from his mind. Then that's genetic gift, basically. Yeah. And of course, the older he gets, I'm sure he introduces swing thoughts because the body does get weaker over time. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Is it fair to say that a mediocre athlete if they're professional, they're probably more than mediocre, who's able to control his mental game will always have an advantage over a gifted athlete who can't, a more gifted athlete?
In other words, a gifted athlete that doesn't have control over his mind versus an average athlete that has control over his mind, which is better?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. I haven't heard that question before.
Okay.
What the balance of it all, right? I would lean towards the idea of giftedness is very important. Genetic gifts is very, very important. Then now, any genetically gifted athlete is also working very hard, right? They're really working hard also. They're all workaholics, especially Americans. So that giftedness usually trumps mediocrity. Mediocrity is even a mediocre, let's you argue Tom Kite maybe is a mediocre talent, but a great mind, but probably not. Probably he actually is not mediocre in terms of genetics, probably not, you know. Yeah. I mean, they're unique. The professional athletes especially, they're a unique lot, you know. I remember watching McElroy was playing at our club a couple of years ago, and now he was playing against two of our pros, really good players, right? And him, and then the guy that brought him over, one of our members. And I mean, it was like when I saw that our two pros that are really good players play against him, it was a joke. It was like there was no comparison, like playing different games.
Yeah.
This is like, in other words, our pros are like probably +2. McElroy's like a +8, +9, +10.
Yeah.
She said, our course, great course. Where are your par fives? So long, so straight, so gifted. And but by the way, McElroy from the back, he was wearing shorts that day, right? He looks like a linebacker. He's like a total broad shoulders, skinny waist, like really fit individual, really a great athlete. In other words. People miss that, you know, the idea of how talented they are physically.
But on the Pro Tour, I mean, McElroy had his own head issues for a long time, right?
Well, that's an Irish. They're overly guilt-ridden, the Irish. So he's the typical Irish person who's like very nice, very giving, very smart, very gentle, and very compliant. And so he got sucked into the whole idea of, I got to help the PGA against Liv, and you know, it's a thankless job, and he got burnt out basically, but he bounced back, you know.
Yeah. Talk to me about Scotty Scheffler, why he's so successful.
Well, that's an interesting story, right? So the backstory with Scheffler is, what I know about him is I treat one of his college roommates. So I know that the true Scotty is someone who is very, very competitive, not a little competitive, like a Tiger Woods, very, extremely must win. Now, he is unbelievable persona, so friendly, so likable, extremely likable person. And that's the interesting conflict when people are when writers are trying to analyze him, because he have a real paradox, a very affable, bright, open guy. And who doesn't love Scotty Scheffler? He's a charming guy, right? Open, honest, but at the same time, there's a killer inside of him, a total killer, real power. I will beat you, you know, and that's what, you know, you have to have a real killer instinct on any sports. You know, these are guys that the best story about killer instinct is Tiger Woods. When he was a kid, at this point, he's like 10, 9, 8 years old. He's already traveling, kind of famous already, right? And his mother would get down to his level before he left for the tournament. And he would say, and the mom would say, "What are you going to do, Tiger?" And Tiger would say, "What, Mommy? What am I going to do?" And the mother would say, "You're going to kill him, Tiger. You're going to kill them all." "Yeah, Mommy, I'll kill them all." So this is amazing. And the father, of course, is a Green Beret. So you have this killer instinct plugged right in. Now, Scotty, mother is a very big-time lawyer, and father is a sweetheart of a guy who stayed home. So tremendous connections and support Scotty has, right? He's a family man. So he's an interesting guy. The reason he's not unbelievably popular is because of his funny looking swing. He's an odd swing. So aesthetics of his golf swing is not good, right? It's like a very odd, awkward looking.
Right.
But if he had like a beautiful swing and he played the way he does now, and he has his killer instinct, forget about it. He totally dominates. But then it would be negative because he'd have so much attention, you know.
Right. So I won't hold you to this, but what is your prediction for Tiger Woods' son?
Not good.
No.
It's impossible. No, it's impossible. I mean, come on. How do you live up to the legacy of a father like that? It's unfair. Like Nicklaus's kids, you know.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult thing, you know, the whole idea of dealing with it's called an ego ideal. I have to live up to to the family reputation, right? So that's a great thing because it does fuel them, but they're inevitably then they're going to feel like they're a failure because you're not going to be another Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen that way. So that's inherent, and that will never be attended to. There'll be no psychologist working with him that's actually addressing that. I guarantee that. So it'll be like a lot of frustration, I think.
Okay. Listen, with full acknowledgement that these quick fixes are not sustainable, can I ask you, hackers out there like me, can you give us some direction on things like first tee jitters, standing over a putt that's probably worth $3, and then meltdowns when the wheels come off on a hole? I mean, what do you do? Do you just say, forget it, I'm going home?
First tee jitters is something that can be managed. The best thing you can do for first tee jitters is you have to have a routine on the first tee. It shouldn't be chit chat, right? It should be you're looking at your target and you're taking practice swings with the target in mind. So what I mean by that is you look at the target, you go down and you swing. The body naturally comes up. You look at the target again, you come down and you swing. You look at the target again, you come down and you swing. And you do that 10 or 12 times. And that's very, very helpful, not only to stretch the body, but also gets the target plugged into the brain, right? So that's a useful thing.
Okay. What about the big putt that's worth $10 or $20?
Now, if I would have followed my own direction and only became a 5-foot putt sports psychologist, I would have a very clear answer. Putting is different than regular golf, right? That's what Ben Hogan hated putting, because there's two different games. There's a long game and then there's a short game, right? So the short game is 50 yards and in, and it's all delicacy. It's all feel, right? Now, what I would say, the best advice I would give, and I gave this to one of my friends who was a senator. He said, I want to become I want to become a 5 handicapper. He was 18 handicapper at the time. Can you help me become a 5 handicapper? I said, absolutely, 100%. No, I guarantee it's going to work. Oh, great. What do I do? First thing you do is you quit your job. Okay, get rid of the job because there's no time for the job when we're talking about what we're talking about. Now, you get a fitness guy you see 5 days a week. You get a putting trainer you see 4 days a week. Full swing trainer you see 5 days a week. You get new equipment, and you do that for 3 to 4 years, you're a 5 handicap. So in terms of putting, how do you become a better putter? You do one thing that members never do. You actually take putting lessons. No one takes putting lessons. It's ridiculous. You should. What does that mean? Well, because alignment, posture, stroke itself, weight distribution, all of these things matter in terms of golf or in terms of a 5-foot putt. So the more you practice and with an expert guidance, the better off you're going to be with putts. And putting and of course, you have to do that because putting is really the extreme anxiety that hits, right?
Yeah.
No question about it.
I am not a psychologist, but my personal viewpoint on good putting is if you think you're a lousy putter, you will be a lousy putter. Conversely, if you think you're a good putter, you're more apt to make more putts. Maybe it has to do with commitment to the line or something.
Well, yeah, that means you use denial to a very powerful effect. That's good. That's a good defense, denial. No, I'm not a bad putter.
Like the lake is not, there's no lake there, right?
Right. Denial and of course, Nicholas is great for denial, right? The story, of course, is, Jack, remember the time you 3-putted on 18 in the major? He said, no, I never 3-putted once on 18 in a major. No, there's proof. Here's the proof. You want to see a video? No, I've never 3-putted on 18 in a major. Never once in my life. So that's perfect denial. Right? And they really are. They know how to protect themselves, you know.
Is that conscious denial? Does he know he's doing that? Or
I think I once interviewed him. I was doing an article he was designing, I think it was Sabonic out in Long Island. And I had to do a piece on superintendents and mentorship. So I asked him, Jack, who's your mentor when it comes to golf course design? Who's your mentor? I have no mentors. No, Jack, who taught you how to be a golf course designer? I have no mentors. No, I have no mentors. Hey, wow, that's confidence.
Yeah, or arrogance. One last question on cognitive. What do you do when you're on a 3rd or 4th hole and you haven't been able to make contact with the ball? The wheels have come off. Is there something you can do to turn it around?
Yes. the typical decline is as follows. People have the expectation that golf is easy. Okay, so that's a complete fallacy, right? Then you make a few mistakes. Okay, so now your anger begins to develop, right? The anger in and of itself is not so bad, right? But it starts to develop. Within another couple of bad holes, then the anger turns into despair, like you collapse into a giving up kind of thing, right? And this is the tip of the very, very common problem, right? For athletes in general, you fall from anger into despair. You give up, basically, is what happens, right? Many athletes do have that problem, right? So how does one understand it? You break down the issue first, and you have to review with the patient, right? There's mistakes that are made. Then you talk to them about the trigger of anger. Then you talk to them about, well, that's being unrealistic to be perfectionistic. And you introduce the idea of perfectionism, which is a defense mechanism, right? Then you chart it out. I show them a chart. No, you don't want to fall into your despair, into your unconscious, right, with guilt and horror. You want to bounce off of the mistake into upward again. So I visually write it out for them, right, spell it out so they can have a sense of, oh, the anger leads to despair. I better not do that so much. And even Tiger learned that, he was angry at the beginning of his career, and then within a couple of years, he was taught by Butch that you got 10 seconds to be angry, then you let it go. And he was a student. He was a good student, Tiger, right? So 10 seconds of anger, boom. Then you go forward into trying to evaluate what's happening, not criticize, evaluate. So that's a very important thing. You have to learn that,
Scheffler's good at that, I think.
I think
so. Do golfers use performance-enhancing drugs, and do they work?
All professional athletes dabble in the concept, right? So for none of them work. There's a benefit to them, and there's a side effect, and the side effects often outweigh the benefits, right? So for golf, they try the beta blockers, tranquilizers, sometimes amphetamine, and it may have a little bit of a positive effect, but it's, beta blockers especially and tranquilizers, it calms them down, but they never play better. They always play worse, right? The only drug that's been proven to have any positive effect, and this is Gary Wadler's work, the classic text on this stuff, is caffeine. 1 or 2 cups of caffeine is good for focus, but that's it. Any of the other drug you can come up with is not going to be good. Is not going to help you. It's going to hurt you much more than it's going to help you.
Yeah. I play with guys who start drinking on the first hole, and they claim it relaxes them.
There's guys to gamble with. These guys that drink all the way through, because there's no way it helps, Yeah, of course it relaxes them and whatever, and it's a more social thing. Maybe they like that, but believe me, this is another whole thing. I work with plenty of alcoholics, and it's like, oh boy, alcohol is a big problem. It's never a good thing. Rarely is it a good thing.
Yeah. What percentage of your practice right now is sports related versus just people with other non-sport related issues?
I would say probably 75-80% now is sports related.
Oh, okay.
I haven't looked carefully, but most now is athletes. Younger, older, professional, elite, amateur, Olympic. Most is basically. I live in the world of sports now.
Okay. Let's talk about the Ryder Cup. This is Ryder Cup week. Can you talk generally about what you expect to happen given your experience with different personality types and nationality traits?
Well, I would say that it's going to be unpredictable and problematic. I'll give you an example. So yesterday, I wanted to go to the Garden City Hotel to have breakfast, close to where I live. So I pull up to the hotel, and the hotel was barricaded like I've never seen any building in my life barricaded.
Wow.
Fences and lots of cops all over the place, right? So the European team is staying at the Garden City Hotel, right? Which is about, I would say, 6 or 7 miles from Bethpage. So the European team is there, and so it's on lockdown. But on lockdown, but I've never seen anything like this before. So that's a hint that this is it'll be an insane Ryder Cup. It really will be. Because what does it mean? Why? Nationalism. Why is nationalism so big now? Well, in terms of America, we're a fragmented culture. Trump got in because the metaphor of the wall. What is the wall? It means we know who we are. Everyone to stay away. We know who we are. So it's a last gasp of holding on to the older American identity. So America is embattled in this regard. So you have America, then you have Europe, a very different culture, totally different culture. You have the Germans, you have the Irish, you have the British, you have the Spanish, much more laid back kind of culture. And also all of those cultures are much more understanding of who they are as national entities, right? The French know that they're French, right? The British know they're Brit and they're proud of it, right? So there's a very, very different mindset. The European mindset is much more cultured, much more. Good example is Luke Donald. I talked to him, about 6 months ago, and I asked him the only question I was interested in: how's your painting coming along? Because he was a great painter. He loved to paint, relaxation, right?
Wow.
He said, no, I don't have any time to paint anymore. But that's an example of sublimation. So the Europeans they have aesthetics, they have kind of a culture. They have Rory McIlroy. He reads Marcus Aurelius. This is a sophisticated guy, right? This is not a dumb guy, right? Okay, now flip forward back to the American side. We have tremendous gifts. We have aggression, competitiveness, workaholism, and that's about it. Now it's gotten as far: aggression, competitiveness, workaholism. We're a very restless country. We work hard all the time. We don't have time for this other crap like art or literature. Forget about that nonsense, right? We want to work, and make some money. So that's great. So that you could see there's a big difference in these two different teams, right? And you could see it. People understand that there's a communal sense of the European team always. That's why they do so well, because this is a team event, right? It's a team event. It's not an individual event. And so for America, that's a very different way to deal with things. It's very tough. I think that Keegan Bradley is like a very aggressive guy. I always think of Keegan as the guy who spits all the time. Spitting is a very aggressive thing.
Yeah.
Spitting. And I usually like that very much. If I'm working with an athlete and they're spitting all the time, this is good. I encourage it. I reinforce it. That's aggression. That's good, this kind of thing. But at the same time, you could see a lot of that. And the crowd will be a big part of the story.
Yeah.
They'll be saying, it's unbelievable what's going on around Beth Page. The story one of my patients told me that his friend is a doctor, and he was approached by somebody who was flying in, and the guy said, I want to rent one room in your house, and I'll pay you $50,000.
Jesus.
It shows you this is an insane thing that's going on right now.
Yeah.
So it's very, very powerful, very intense. When you see the lockdown of the Garden City Hotel is one example. So it's it'll be fascinating. Everyone's interested in it,
Yeah.
It's comparable to the Olympics. And I think I try to figure out how much they'll make this week. They'll make $1 billion, I think, in 1 week.
Who will?
The PGA and the European. That's a lot of money.
Merchandise?
Ticket sales, unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that's just one part of it. Television rights, astronomical, corporate stuff. So there's a lot of money that flows through here in 1 week. So it's a very, very big event.
Will the New York crowd help or hurt the Europeans?
I think it undoubtedly will hurt them. And they're trying their best, I think, to prepare for the abuse, I guess, is what it's going to come down to. They're trying to deal with it, and they're preparing, I'm sure, in ways that are kind of rehearsal of stuff like that. But I think it's going to be problematic. And to the extent that hopefully they control the alcohol intake, which they probably won't, because there's a lot of money in that also. So it'll be a fascinating thing to watch.
My understanding was they priced the tickets so high to keep out the lower class idiots rather than the upper class idiots, thinking that maybe the upper class idiots won't be as obnoxious.
Yeah. Maybe I don't know. I haven't heard that, but that's possible. Anything would help. I know some of the athletes I work with, golfers, who said when they started sports betting in terms of golf, they said they really felt bad about it because they knew there would be too much involvement by the fan, too much cursing and yelling and. I know the horse business very well, and the jockeys constantly take abuse because all the fans are betting, and so when you come in, you don't win, they get cursed at all the time. It's very nasty, So we'll see. So I hadn't heard that they're selling the high price tickets because to keep at the riffraff, so to speak, the middle, the lower class. I don't know.
Are you going to keep doing this, Dr. Tom? Are you going to continue to take patients or clients, whatever you want to call them?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sure. It's a fun job.
Yeah. What about What about another book? Any plans for another book?
Yeah, so I'm writing a book now, the primer on depth sports psychology, directed really towards other sports psychologists that are not going to go through another 4 years of training to get psychoanalytics knowledge. So this is a book that emphasizes the 8 or 9 big key factors in psychoanalysis for the sports psychologist. In other words, things like proper intake, what is the unconscious, dream analysis, resistance analysis, defense analysis, all of those things, and that's what the field needs that desperately, actually.
Yeah. So what am I not asking you that you'd like to talk about before we wrap up?
I would say good question is the secret of Tiger Woods as far as his defenses, because he was remarkable. So his defenses, I've never seen anything like it. So he had all mature defenses, including anticipation. Anticipation is what his father taught him. Anticipation is how you have to predict exactly what's going to happen in a round of golf before it happens. So what he did, I stood behind him once at an open. I was shocked how sophisticated he was. He went through every shot he was going to hit. First tee shot, he asked his caddy, what's the wind direction on the first tee shot? The caddy said, from the north. He rehearses a series of shots about that. Second shot on number 1, first tee shot on number 2, a wedge in number 2, and going through wind direction and rehearsing shots, right? That's anticipation at the highest level. That's a high level defense. He also, Tiger Woods also uses suppression, a very high level of suppression. Suppression means you push down any anxiety before it hits you, right? And he learned that through meditation, Buddhism. His mother was a Buddhist. He learned how to meditate by the time he was 4 or 5 years old.
Wow.
So that was very helpful. He could suppress. That's why many of the South Korean women are very, very good at suppressing anxiety. They learn these kind of things through the culture, right? Or through religion, one or the other, right? So he was very, very talented with his high-level defenses. Other defenses that are high-level for athletes are like Lee Trevino is good with humor, right? So humor is a high-level defense. If you can joke around and relax as you're playing, this is very, very helpful. Tiger wasn't so much about humor, but could throw some jokes around also. Affiliation is a high-level defense. That's like a family connection. Spanish are very good with that, right? Like John Rahm is very affiliated, connected. This is a Hispanic kind of trait. That's a very good trait. So, the defenses, the high-level defenses are what we try to teach. We try to understand what the low-level defenses are: perfectionism, overthinking, intellectualization. Displacement happens a lot, which is a kind of a neurotic defense where they angry on the golf course, they go home and they scream at the wife. That's displacement. You want to get rid of all these things, and you move into higher level defenses, and you have to teach that,
Didn't Tiger also have a self-destructive influence?
Well, I think none of his early childhood experiences were resolved properly.
Oh.
So that was very, very sad. When he was a kid, he was abused. He lived in a white neighborhood. They tied him to trees. They
Really?
That's on his chest. Really nasty, very, very abusive experiences he had.
I didn't know that.
That was never really resolved. So you could see that what his womanizing was related to that. Kind of like a feeling like I want to get revenge, and also I'm an outsider, this kind of thing. So always with the white pretty women, this kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a very sad story, that is,
So talk to us about, how do people contact you? How do they get your book?
Well, you could contact me through my email,
Which is?
drtferraro@aol.com.
Okay. You have a website too, right?
Yeah. Or you can phone me, 516-248-7189.
Okay.
You can look me up, on the internet. My books are easily available, sold through Amazon and all the other distributors. So, it's easy to find them. Just under Dr. Tom Ferraro, and they'll come up, I'm sure,
Well, Dr. Tom, this has been really interesting. I'm going to try some of your quick fixes, see how long they last. If not, I'll be calling you for hypnosis. I didn't know you did that. Can you do online hypnosis?
It's not as easy because you need to see the breathing rate of a person.
Oh,
It's hard to connect the breathing, the intake, outtake of a breath in order to get them into the hypnotic trance. So it's tricky.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever tried it on Zoom.
Okay. I'll try alcohol instead. But thanks again.
My pleasure.
Okay. Take care.